So this week we're talking about crime and legal versus illegal goods, and it's a little bit tough for economists because whether something is legal or illegal is a judgment call, um, and it's a normative call based on societal values. Not really an economic issue, to be honest. Um, why tobacco, for instance, is legal in every state, and yet, I don't know, you know, let's just say like marijuana is in some states and not in other states, and crack cocaine isn't legal in any of the states. Um, there's no economic reason necessarily why that's the case. Um, and I'm not right. Why is caffeine legal in every state? Caffeine seems pretty destructive. Sugar, right? That's causes diabetes. That's pretty destructive. Um, but why isn't sugar illegal? Well, it seems a little harsh to be honest, but um, that's some of the kind of things we're going to look at here. Um, a lot of it. Um, how do I make this kind of simple to understand here? A lot of it really comes down to are there externalities that are being generated? Let's actually just jump to that rather than looking at this at the graph here. Are there externalities that are being generated? Meaning, is someone else either benefiting or paying a price for something being done? Generally speaking, that something becomes illegal when it generates a significant externality, negative externality. So let's just take, for example, one for us in the state of Hawaii, fireworks. Why are fireworks illegal in Hawaii? Well, people are pretty crowded on over one another, right? And we set off these fireworks, and it scares our pets. It can cause fires. It causes lots of damage. And so the idea there is we make it illegal so it doesn't impose these costs on anyone. Let's take another example. Um, Drunk driving, right? So drunk driving is illegal, largely because the externalities are quite huge, right? Someone gets like, all sauced up, and they're drunk, and then they go the wrong way down the H1, right? Huge externality when they hit something or someone. That's the easiest one that an economist can rationalize, um, the externality, rationalize the good being illegal. It's a lot more difficult when the good is considered immoral. It's not um, entirely clear to me, um, why something is um, considered illegal just because it is immoral. Um, Probably the best example we have of this would be uh, to some extent, right? I mean, we don't know what the future is yet. Of as I make this lecture in January 2022, we don't know what the status is yet of abortion, for instance, whether it'll be legal or not. Um, and so it's hard to say there what the externalities are. Again, I'm not the. You shouldn't. My beliefs are my own beliefs. You don't need to worry yourselves or concern yourselves over my beliefs. I mean, in some sense, because I am Catholic, I don't really have a, um, and I try to be a bit devout. I don't really have a stance on it. The stance is provided to me, but despite what I, as a male, believe. What I also know is that the facts demonstrate to me, and you don't have to, have a belief based out of the facts for something like this. You just have to have a belief of what you think is right. I mean, that's the whole notion of right versus wrong. It's based on your personal opinion. But what we know is that a lot of people um, that we know of that are getting an abortion are, someone who's married, and it's something where the abortion is occurring because if they had the child, it would push them into greater poverty. I'm not sure that that's a immoral reason to receive an abortion if it's ensuring that the rest of the surviving members of the family all live a little bit better. Who am I to say? I mean, I'm not in that situation. Um, but do you see how difficult this becomes, even as I'm just kind of like, I mean, obviously, I'm just kind of freely talking about this, but we don't live in the land of Shitingville, right? I don't get to make the rules. I don't get to decide what is immoral or not. And that's part of the frustration I think we all feel, right? Is that sometimes we agree with someone's morality call about what we should be allowed to do or not in our society. And there are other times when we disagree, right? That's why, for instance, you know, I I think everyone should have to get like a vaccine, right? The vaccine mandate. I think everyone should have to get it, but I also don't think um, I think abortion should be legal. There's obviously someone else out there, right, who thinks the exact opposite, and I'm not. I don't know if I'm right or not. I really don't. Um, I'm willing to permit the fact that the other person could be right. It's just what I believe. Difficult again to make an argument, and frustrating that then we as a society make certain things legal or not based on a hunch, based on a guess. I like it much better when we can tie it directly to externalities. So, there, if we say it's illegal to start a campfire in the forest, the reason why is because it dramatically raises the risk of starting a forest fire. Making that illegal, much easier um, to accept. Um, the other way in which we, or the other reason why we sometimes would get involved and make something illegal or not, is if we don't think that people will make the right decision on their own. That's a bit paternalistic of us, but you know, it really kind of emerges with the drinking age, for instance, that it's illegal to drink up until you're 21 in the United States. Yet at 21, you magically are allowed to. Well, we tend to think that, you know, especially teenagers don't make good decisions. So we need to make the decision for them. But for most other things, if you want to consume a lot of sugar, I guess you get to make the decision on your own. Um, because if it's not sugar, what about starches, right? What about, candy? Um, all of these are things that are legal, and we get to kind of decide how much we spend on those things. And again, drugs are generally the exception to the rule. Okay, I'm just going to skip this for right now. I just don't want to worry about the graphs. Uh, if my memory serves me right, Hawaii is the most expensive place to smoke in the United States, I think. Um, we are, I think the most expensive state to smoke. Oh no, sorry, we're not. We're sixth highest. Oh, 12.85 a pack. Jeez, I haven't smoked in a long time. Because I still remember paying like $2 or $3. Jeez. So why does a pack of cigarettes cost so much? Most of that are the taxes that are associated with it. Not sure what this is telling us here. Um, this is just facts about our state. I'm not sure it's really telling us anything here. Um, why is that? Why is it so expensive? Well, because the problem is that people smoke for decades, and then just as they turn 65 and are on Medicare, that's exactly the time where they're going to need lots of health care. Um, and we need to collect taxes to then pay for those greater expenses. So we impose huge taxes um, on smokers, in part because we know they'll pay the tax because they're addicted to smoking, but um, also because they impose huge costs on the system. Drunk driving, huge externalities. Look at that, 37,000 deaths, huge amount. So in some sense, you either have to, well, the act itself is illegal, but you also have excise taxes on alcohol. And then we obviously know that people who are on drugs or people on alcohol commit crimes um, against others. Um, the kind of the reckoning that's all happening right now is that um, because drugs are illegal, that in of itself creates other externalities, right? So because they're illegal, um, the drugs themselves, you know, have a lot of crime associated with it because it is illegal and there's no sense of justice, right, or enforcement mechanisms. What we know about the let's say, legalized marijuana industry in Hawaii, for instance, is that it's crazy expensive compared to the street, right? Buying it illegally. Um, it's hard to see how a company like Green Aloha can like compete against much cheaper prices, um, for that which is illegally grown. Um, and so it pushes out the legal market. Um, the only other thing we can say is that maybe we should just let people drink and smoke. Or, like in the case of COVID, maybe we should just let people get COVID. Like, why are we worried about the vaccine mandate? Because if we do, then maybe by the time they need um, they need money, right, to cure their asthma or something like that, or their emphysema, they might already be dead, which is great from an economics perspective because then we didn't have to pay out. Um, but that's a little bit. I mean, do we really want fellow humans to die so that we save money? I mean, it becomes a little bit problematic. So, one of the things that we see, like when we impose taxes on things like tobacco, one of the things that we see is that we like taxing, for instance, tobacco, because the individuals who smoke are what we would call inelastic, meaning that they're not very sensitive to price changes. They know they want to smoke. And there's not a lot of alternatives. Well, there is a pretty significant alternative now, which is vaping. But really, the biggest thing would be is that people just pay the cigarette tax because they gotta smoke. Um, and basically, the states back in 1998 got the cigarette companies to basically kind of admit that smoking was addictive and that they got these people addicted to it. And the tobacco companies agreed to pay out $250 billion spread out over 20 years. And the states took that money in Hawaii, they took that money and they used it to fund the UH Cancer Center. And then there's a big chunk of money that goes to the UH system. Well, the problem with that is that the money's all gone. Um, and now we don't have a lot to show for it. So that's a problem. Um, we got all this money from the cigarette companies, and it's hard to account for what the money actually went for because it just went into like the big UH system, and then who knows what happened to it. In other states, they just like paid it out directly to the taxpayers. I'm not sure that's necessarily good either. Um, and it's not, and you kind of see this here, right? So, in terms of what happened, is that for tobacco, so the closer this number is to zero, the more inelastic the customer is. So this for here for negative zero point 0.2 for adults, that means that if you change the price by like let's say 10%, let's say you raise the price by 10%, you only lose 2% of your customers. That's not a lot. And now look at what happens. You raise the price by 10%, you lose 8% of your customers, largely because of vaping. So even the idea that we can just capture a lot of money from cigarette smokers because it's just a convenient source, it's just not a lot of people are smoking these days. I mean, I don't know what the data exactly suggests, but there's not a lot of people smoking cigarettes. There could be a lot of people vaping, but it's just not like how it used to be 20 years ago. And, I'm not entirely sure that, states, what are they going to do? Are they going to now turn to, like, for instance, marijuana as the source for, taxing that and capturing more money? Not entirely sure. I mean, we kind of see that in this picture here where they talk about right here in Hawaii, we got it for medical reasons. In other states, it's legal, at least on the state level. Although for the entire country, it's still illegal from a federal perspective. Um, I don't know. I don't get that. The debate about marijuana. I'm not sure I get too entirely impassioned about it because it honestly is not a um, it's not a huge source. It's not a huge sector in the economy. It's not a huge source of revenue. So I'm not sure why we're spending so much time and our scarce resources on legalizing something that's such a small part of the market. The other side of this, just going back here, I just don't want to just kind of focus on the words more so than the graph, is things like prostitution, for instance, right? Because it's illegal, the gender impacts of that are quite large, right? So you now have, if it's illegal then to sell, you know, services, um, you obviously really affect the lives of those who are delivering the services because now they don't have the protection of the police, enforcement of contracts, things like that. And it obviously affects those individuals greatly, causing huge externalities. So I don't care what the morality is of prostitution or not, but I can certainly see from a worker protection standpoint, why wouldn't we want, you know, prostitutes, for instance, to have access to, um, you know, protection, right? Condoms, things like that. It's a little bit um, easy to see the huge externalities that would exist, and why wouldn't we try to pass um, some laws to either make it illegal, or if we were going to legalize it, that we would have various protections. Okay. So, I mean, I know some, you can spend obviously your analysis paper talking about this if this is what you're passionate about. I'll just be honest. I'm not very passionate about marijuana legalization. It just um, that's not what excites me. There are other things in this world, like the looming Social Security and Medicare deficit, which I think is far more important for us to be spending our scarce time on than legalizing marijuana, to be honest.